What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue with our 2025 predictions for the upcoming 2025 college football season. Up next is the Houston Cougars. Houston, of course, coming off a pretty rough year last year, going just 4-8 overall in 2024. Kind of a respectable, though, 4-8 season. I think this team was probably, expected to go 5-7 or even 6-6 because they had Willie Fritz come in as the head coach, and a lot of people were expecting Houston to do a whole lot better than they were from last year. But I had this team going 3-9, so I was really close to getting their actual prediction right. But you look at this team for 2025, I think Houston is going to be a lot better this year. I think this is a team that has a chance to make it to a bowl game. You look at the offensive side of the football, you got Connor Weigman coming in from the transfer portal at quarterback from Texas A&M. Yeah, a lot of experience there at the quarterback position. You got other options, but I feel like Connor Weigman does provide a pretty big spark here for this Houston offense. We'll see if he's the good Connor Weigman that he used to be or if he's going to be the bad one. Yeah, we've seen the good and the bad of Connor Weigman, but I feel like he will be a little bit better this year, and I also think this offense kind of does fit him well into this system, and I think this offense overall could be pretty good. If they can stay consistent and stay healthy, then this Houston team has a chance to be a pretty decent offense, and that also goes for the defense as well. If that defense can also stay consistent, this Houston team has a chance to be a pretty decent team. I don't know if they're a dark horse team or not, though. I think they still have a pretty long ways to go before they kind of, make themselves a top contender in the Big 12 and then also a dark horse team. But here's a schedule for them in 2025. Again, Houston was 4-8 last year in 2024. So let's go game by game, and I'll give you my official prediction for this Houston team for 2025. Now, their first two games of the year, they play Stephen F. Austin here to open things up on a Thursday on August 28th, and then you got Rice here on the road on September 6th, and they do play Rice every year, obviously because of the rivalry and everything, and they got beat by Rice last year at home, so that was definitely a disappointing loss there for the Cougars. This year they played them on the road, so it's not going to be tricky, though. I mean, Rice is not a really tough place to play, but that is, of course, a rivalry game, and you never know what to expect here between these two teams, but I think they win these two games pretty easily. The difference between them, though, Stephen F. Austin, I think, is a pretty easy win. That's a game where Houston probably will score like 30 or 40 points, and then obviously against Rice, I think they only win it by at least a couple of touchdowns, but it could be lesser than that. Maybe it's only like a 4-point win. You never know about this Rice team. Sometimes they can pull off, pretty big upsets over this Houston team in this rivalry, but I got to go with the Cougars here in this one, and I also got them beating Stephen F. Austin to open things up there on that Thursday. So I got Houston starting off 2-0, and then they go into conference play on September 12th. They will also play this one on weeknight game. This one will be on a Friday. They play Colorado. And, going back to my Colorado video a long time ago, I did pick Colorado to win this game. I kind of do regret that now because I feel like this is a game that Houston definitely can win because you obviously got some roster turnover there for Colorado, but they're going to have new players that are going to have to step up big time, and that is kind of the case here for Houston as well. Both of these teams have new players on their roster, and yeah, I think it's a pretty even matchup. I know Houston is playing at home, but I think Colorado does make explosive plays a little bit better than Houston. I think Houston wants to, probably wants to make this a low-scoring defensive battle. They probably want to run the football, but I don't think it will be enough. I think Colorado definitely is looking like the better team here, but I wouldn't really, be surprised if Houston did pull off some sort of upset here because I feel like the Buffaloes probably will be ranked in the preseason top 25, but you never know. Colorado might not even be ranked. You never know, but still, I'm going with Colorado in that game, and that's going to drop Houston now to 2-1, and then they get their first bye week of the season before playing at Oregon State on September 27th, so they do have to travel out west here, but Oregon State is a team that I don't really study as much as I used to. This is a team that, just plays in the Pac-2, or if you want to call it, it's the former Pac-12. So, yeah, I don't think Oregon State's going to be really that great this year. Last year they were not really that great, so I don't know how much better they will be. I think the bye week kind of does help out because you have to travel out west and everything. It's not really a long ways away for Houston, but still, I think Houston on paper is the better team. They beat the Beavers here of Oregon State here on the road on September 27th, and that's going to put them at 3-1. Then they play Texas Tech at home on October 4th. Texas Tech team that I've been talking about being the most underrated team heading into 2025, and then also a dark horse team in the Big 12 and the potentially a top 25 team as well. Yeah, Texas Tech I think is going to be pretty good. Houston though I think will be competitive in this game. They'll make this a pretty close game, but I just feel like Texas Tech, their experience on their roster is definitely going to be too much here for the Cougars to handle. And Houston, I think the concern for them is probably the depth on their roster. If they cannot stay healthy, then that probably will be a concern the rest of the way forward. But I think they'll compete in this game. But I think Texas Tech, again, their experience is way too much, and I think the Red Raiders do grab the win here. So even though at home, I think Houston does fall to Texas Tech. That's going to put them at 3-2. Then they go on the road to play Oklahoma State next on October the 11th. This is a pretty tough place to play. Although the Cowboys were not really good last year, I'm not really high on this Oklahoma State team, but you never know. Mike Gundy can definitely turn things around for this Oklahoma State football program. He's a pretty good coach, and he's been there for quite some time now. And again, it's on the road, very tough place to play. I think Houston might struggle a little bit in this game, and so with that being said, I think Oklahoma State actually gets the win here. And on paper, I think Houston is a much better team than Oklahoma State, but I think Oklahoma State playing at home is going to get it done. So I think the Cowboys maybe are due for a win at this point. They're really off to a rough start, and they somehow grab a big win on the season. I think they beat Houston here, and that's going to put the Cougars now at 3-3. Then they play at home against Arizona on October 18th. I don't really think Arizona is going to be really that better this year. These are two similar teams. They're both coming off pretty rough years last year. Arizona, though, was a pretty disappointing team, but they had a they had a first-year head coach, and it obviously kind of, ruined the Jetfish era and everything. Yeah, Arizona is a team that I'm not really high on. They might be more competitive than they were last year in some of their games, but I just think Houston playing at home, they're kind of desperate here for a win at the end of Big 12 at some point. They're already off to an 0-3 start, so I think they do finally get their first Big 12 win. And I think it comes here against Arizona here on October 18th. So that's going to put them now here at 4-3. And then they play Arizona State after that here on the road on October 25th. Arizona State, of course, a team that's going to be really experienced, just like Texas Tech. But, Arizona State's a more physical team, in my opinion, than the Red Raiders. And I think this is going to be a pretty tough game here for Houston. This might be the only game in the Big 12 this year that Houston might, lose by double digits, maybe by a couple of touchdowns. Again, I just think the Sun Devils are going to be that good this year. So, yeah, I got to go with Arizona State here in this game. I'm going to go with the Sun Devils to give Houston their fourth loss of the season. So, Houston is now sitting here at 500, 4-4 going into the final month of the season. They need to win 2 more games in order to get to a bowl game. They got West Virginia next here at home on November 1st. This is a pretty even matchup. West Virginia going to have a lot of new players as well. But I think playing at home, that's really the difference here in this one. So, I think this is a pretty easy pick here. Home field advantage will be the difference. I think in a close game, I'm going to go with the Cougars, though, to win this game, and I think they improve to 5-4. Then they play another weeknight game. They'll play their third weeknight game of the season here on also a Friday on November 7th on the road at UCF. A UCF team that's kind of similar, maybe to Houston, but not really quite similar because they do have a first-year head coach, and it is Scott Frost. He's been here before. But I think UCF, you look at this team by the month of November, maybe they're better by this time, and this is also a weeknight game. Houston's probably playing better football to this point, but so is UCF. And I feel like if UCF is kind of due for a win at this point, it is probably right here against Houston. So yeah, UCF, maybe they're coming in on a losing streak. They're coming in a little bit angry, and they're also trying to, get a win somehow. And I think this is one of those games. Again, it's a weeknight game, and it really does take a long time, to kind of prepare for these games. So I think UCF does get the win here. So I'm going with UCF in that game, and that's going to drop Houston back to 500 at 5-5. Then they get their second bye week finally before playing TCU at home on November 22nd. I think this is a pretty good spot for a bye week for Houston. TCU is going to be a solid team. They're not really a potential dark horse team in my opinion, but you never know. TCU sometimes is up there with the middle of the pack of the Big 12 and everything. So yeah, I think this will be a competitive game. You know, I talked about TCU. They're kind of on a winning streak here at this point, and I also think Houston is kind of due for another big win here at this point. And I think they actually beat TCU here. Again, they get a bye week before playing this game, which is going to help them out, and I also think they're going to, you know, pretty much, you know, come out thinking their season's on the line because they do want to get that 6th win, and I think it comes right here. So I'm going to go with Houston here to get the win over TCU. That's going to put them into a bowl game at 6-5, and then the final game of the season on the road at Baylor on November 29th. Pretty similar team to Texas Tech, a lot of experience coming back for this Baylor Bear team, and I also think they're a dark horse team and potentially a top 25 team. Yeah, I like this Baylor team a lot. I think this one is going to be a pretty competitive game though, but still, it's on the road, very tough place to play. I think Baylor on paper, definitely the more experienced team, and I think Baylor kind of is quite the better team here, so I'm going with Baylor here to close out the year with a loss for Houston. So I got this Houston team actually finishing 6-6, so that's going to put them into a bowl game here at 6-6. I think that's definitely a pretty fair prediction. I can definitely see this team potentially maybe going 7-5, because what if they beat Oklahoma State on the road or even Colorado at home? That's probably going to put them at 7-5, but if they win both of those games, that's going to put them at 8-4. Now, to be fair, they could probably go 5-7 or definitely like 4-8 again. I don't know if I see 4-8 again though. I think I can see 5-7 or 6-6 and 7-5, the most likely scenarios here for Houston. But I got this team going 500, 6-6, and making it to a bowl game in 2025 in Willie Fritz's second year as the head coach. So that's my prediction for Houston. Give me your prediction for this team down in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.